Describe Ethereum to the average person, why it's important.
Yeah, so first of all, there's two kinds of average people. There's the average person who has already heard of Bitcoin, and there's the average person who hasn't, right? So, I mean, for the first category, it's a bit easier because if you understand what Bitcoin is, and you understand that it's a peer-to-peer digital currency, and you understand that if you want to have a digital currency that's decentralized, then you need some kind of database to store how much money everyone has, right? Like if I have 100, digital Bitcoin dollars or digital whatever, cash, and I send 100 to you, and I also send the same 100 to someone else, then those are two transactions, either one of which is legal by itself, but both of which are illegal in combination because they'd be turning 100 units of cash into 200. And this is the classic double spending problem, and in order to solve it, you basically need to have some system that keeps track of, have these coins already been spent? How much money do I actually have at any given time? How much money do I have the right to spend at any given time? And you can very easily do this with a centralized server, but if you want to do this in a way that's decentralized, which is Bitcoin's original point in the spirit of things like BitTorrent, it's actually a very hard computer science problem to figure out how to do it. And Satoshi Nakamoto probably came up with the first solution that really is practical in this kind of open permissionless context, which is the Nakamoto blockchain. And that was where the idea of blockchain technology in general came from. Now, where Ethereum comes from is basically you take that idea, the idea that you can use what I call crypto economics, so a combination of cryptographic algorithms, things like hashing and digital signatures, and the kinds of economic incentives that keep systems like Bitcoin going, and use them to create these kind of decentralized networks with memory, so these kind of decentralized database-like things for a whole bunch of other applications as well. Right? So around 2013, people started realizing really that these blockchains are usable for much more than peer-to-peer digital currency. And the first major thing aside from Bitcoin was probably Namecoin, which was trying to do a peer-to-peer decentralized DNS. But then people started thinking, can you do other kinds of digital assets? Can you do smart contracts? Can you do financial agreements? Can you do registries about identity? Can you do all these other things? And there were so many applications that building a blockchain for each one doesn't really work. And so the core idea behind Ethereum is, you can have a general purpose blockchain. We can have a blockchain where instead of the blockchain working like a Swiss Army knife, where you have 5 different tools for 5 different categories of applications, you have a blockchain that understands a general purpose programming language. So, kind of like your phone, in your phone you have Android or iOS. And inside of Android or inside of iOS, you can have apps. The apps are written in whatever programming language they're written in. Anyone can create an app. Anyone can download an app and run it. So that was the kind of general purpose flexibility I was trying to bring to the blockchain world.
Yeah, it's amazing, the concept of a Turing-complete blockchain.
Now, with digital assets, you can think about this kind of concept and push it much, much further, because in the digital world, in the world of cryptography, it's this world where even individuals are capable of basically having cryptographic defenses that are strong enough to even sometimes ward off state-level actors. And when you have that kind of security, the possibilities go up, right? So the general notion of a smart contract is that it's like a computer program that directly controls digital assets. The kind of direct control here is important, right? It's not a computer program that makes a recommendation to a guy about how the guy should control the digital asset. It's a computer program that controls the digital asset. Like on Ethereum, you can literally send a bunch of Ether into a computer program. And once you've done this, the computer program itself has basically the unilateral ability to control where the money goes. If the computer program sends the money to address A, it goes to address A. If it wants to send it to address B, it goes to address B. And if it doesn't want to send it anywhere at all, then the money just stays there. And you can see this being used in a bunch of applications like insurance, just like any kind of self-executing financial contract. You can reduce counterparty risk in a lot of those kinds of applications by potentially a really huge amount. I mean, you could imagine it being used for even for more complex things. So there's this idea of DAOs, which are like these entire long-running entities that hold on to digital assets and basically use those digital assets in various ways according to these kind of fairly complex sets of rules. And you could even imagine, systems for crowdfunding. So if you think about what Kickstarter does, for example, it's people throw in money. If they've thrown in enough money within 30 days, then the money goes to the developer. And if they do not send in enough money, then everyone gets refunded. And that's like a set of rules that could be replicated in a piece of code. Now, outside the financial world, there's a lot of possibilities as well. So like the DNS is just one simple and natural one. And there is already a system on Ethereum called ENS, the Ethereum name system. And this idea of giving human readable names that are in some ways like not tied to any kind of issuer is also one that just seems very interesting. You could imagine expanding this to identities. I mean, you could take this concept pretty far.
So you can replace money, you can replace Wall Street, you can replace core internet protocols. Right. What else can you do? In fact, I remember I looked at your About Me page, and it has this funny story. I don't know if it's real or not, but you first saw the power of decentralized, or at least the demand for decentralized applications when your World of Warcraft character had his rules changed on him by a Blizzard update. And that annoyed you so much that you had to go out and build something like Ethereum. So in theory, you could even build a massively multiplayer game on top of Ethereum, where everyone can have the rules verified, right?
Well, the story's true, though. The fact that them nerfing Siphon Life and leading to me crying myself to sleep is what led directly to Ethereum is a bit exaggerated.
Okay. I do encourage you to check out Vitalik's About Me page. It's a riot. So now, obviously, if you're going to replace all of these different systems, you have a scaling issue. You have to figure out, especially with a centralized mechanism like that, even just to handle Visa's throughput, let alone every imaginable smart contract, that's not going to work if everyone's running a copy of every program on their computer.
Yeah, totally. So, if you look at just the raw numbers of blockchains today, Bitcoin is currently processing a bit less than 3 transactions a second, and if it goes close to 4, then it's already at peak capacity. Ethereum, right, over the last few days, it's been doing about 5 a second, and if it goes above 6, then it's also at peak capacity. So, on the other hand, Uber on average 12 rides a second, PayPal several hundred, Visa several thousand, major stock exchanges tens of thousands, and if you want to go up to IoT, then you're talking hundreds of thousands. And if you want to go up to non-financial applications, so like for example, there's a platform called Leroy, which is basically just Twitter on the blockchain, then you're talking also about hundreds of thousands, possibly millions. So, there is a kind of gap from here to there. And I think right now there already is really a lot of institutional hype in the space and just public hype. So when you have, like Vladimir Putin having, knowing what blockchains and Ethereum are, and Paris Hilton going out promoting ICOs on Twitter, that's peak hype. But the reason, I think a large part of the reason why a lot of this hasn't materialized into action yet is precisely because of some of these technical obstacles that make blockchains, work okay for some niche use cases, but not really work well for mainstream use.
Oh, baby. Baby, I eat this shit from right out. Dedicated to all the pretty girls. All the pretty girls in the world, and the other girls too. Cause to me you pretty anyway, baby. You give me your number, I call you up. You act like you're...
Although, yeah, like it's definitely the case that there's a lot of adoption purely because of people's speculative interest. But then, on the other hand, that's not, that has a bad side and a good side, right? And I think one of the good sides really is that, in part because of this, there actually is a lot more interest in the possible social benefits of the decentralized technology than there are in many of the other approaches that have been tried over the last decade. If you look at diaspora, great idea, ended up failing completely, right? And a lot of these kind of decentralized projects tends to not work very well, and in a large part because basically lack of funding and just lack of a kind of good incentive for actually building out the infrastructure. whereas here in the cryptocurrency land, there's a lot of money, and at least that one particular problem can be solved.
Right. So now because we've married the economics to the crypto, the incentive issues are solved, and economic incentives can unite people in a way that pure politics cannot.
Yo, not just to pre-compile a change of opcodes. We're here to sustain and scale all the full nodes.
Proof of stake is hard, but what I do know is when we learn a shard, we'll change the whole game, though.
E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo. Shard 3, BLS, and Lamport, and all of this crypto just sets the stage for Merkle proofs, plasma chains, plap, plap. Zca's narcs coming over, clap, clap. Privacy scaling in a snap, snap. Constant products, oracles, tap, tap. Merkle proofs, plasma chains, plap, plap. Zca's narcs coming over, quack, quack. Privacy scaling in a snap, snap. Constant products, oracles, it's all about the dApps.
Every user, every wallet, every dApp. ZK miners, double signers, every villain with attacks. Every channel operator, every plap. Every phone node, every staker, everyone will interact. And that is that.
Constantinople is done. Fork, plasma group L2 engage. No fork, all of it coming in waves. Fork, your boy Carlos is from New York.
Plasma, state channels, layer 1, layer 2, layer 4, 8, 16, binary, Bitcoin, blockchain, trust, human coordination. You know the drill. Merkle proofs, plasma chains, plap, plap.
ZK's narcs coming over, quap, quap. Privacy scaling in a snap, snap. Constant products, oracles, tap, tap. Merkle proofs, plasma chains, plap, plap. ZK's narcs coming over, quap, quap. Privacy scaling in a snap, snap. Constant products, oracles, it's all about the dApps.
Not just a recompile or change of opcodes. We're here to change the rails, upgrade all our full nodes.
E-WASM is hard, but what I do know is with abstract accounts we'll change the whole game though.
E2.0, yo,
E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo.
Logo octahedral, we must coordinate, but we ain't no cathedral, no one subordinate. Every team and every project we could get far. Subvergic biologic, we work like a bazaar, yeah.
Staking all in the first phase. Spork, all of this coming in waves. Spork, deposits coming in waves. Spork, your boy Carlos is from New York. Yeah. Everybody E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo, E2.0, yo,
E2.0, go have some bro, yo.
Hey.
Difficulty,
Hey.
ice age, meltdown. Layer 1, layer 3, 9, 27, ternary. Build your own hash functions for maximum security.
This is what happens when you code a lot.
Liveness failure. Less than
Liveness failure.
2/3 online.
Oh, yeah.
Flashed.
You said in your speech that neither Bitcoin nor Ether would be considered securities and thus not under the purview of the SEC. Can you very briefly explain what your reasoning is?
Sure, Bob. These are complex facts and circumstances tests, but when we look at Bitcoin or if we look at Ether and the highly decentralized nature of the networks, we don't see a third-party promoter where applying the disclosure regime would make a lot of sense. So we're comfortable in some sort of viewing these as items that don't have to be regulated as securities.
Now, you also talked about initial coin offerings or ICOs, which are ways of raising money using cryptocurrencies. Did you use a similar reasoning? You implied that most seem to be securities, ICOs, but some of them are not. Can you just show us what the difference is simply?
I wish we had a simple way to say this is in and this is out. As I mentioned, they're usually facts and circumstances tests. But a key factor is there a third-party promoter here who knows much more about the instrument than investors might? If that's the case, that's sort of an initial indicator that we might have a securities transaction. If people are buying it for investment and for a return and looking to that party for a return, then again, that's an indicia of a security. If you have, on the other hand, a token that's just used in the network for a good or service, and that's why people are buying it, and that service is available and up and running, not under development, then you may not have a security.
Mr. Hinman Kelly here, just to be clear, does that mean if stocks didn't have a third-party promoter, they wouldn't be securities?
Well, as you know, Kelly, stocks represent an interest in an enterprise where there's a management team, and it's really, whenever you're buying a stock or a bond, you're relying on that management team. Those are the third-party efforts we're talking about, where someone is creating value for you, you're passive, and you're expecting their efforts to generate a return.
So just to be clear, for example, a book of the month club that we're joining on an ICO or a golf club membership, we're not expecting any financial gain there. That would not be considered a security, am I right?
Fair enough. If you have that system up and running, if you have someone promoting the next golf course and is selling interests, and the architect and the land and all the key items aren't there yet, and you buy 25 memberships, that may be an investment. You're looking for a return on that. On the other hand, if you go down the road and you buy an investment or you buy a membership in a club that's up and running and you just use it to play a round of golf, that's probably just a good old golf membership.
You and Jay Clayton, the head of the SEC, have been very adamant that you are not going to change the definition of securities laws to fit this new technology. One of the points you made in your speech was the concern about the fraud that was out there in this space. Are you seeing significant fraud?
We do certainly see cases where people are trying to repackage an investment opportunity as a coin or a token and saying that somehow because it's labeled that way, it's not an investment security. And in many cases, we have seen people doing that where the underlying enterprise is not a solid investment opportunity. It's been misrepresented. So we do see fraud, and we do see it being packaged up this way. On the other hand, we think there's an enormous amount of promise in the distributed ledger technology and blockchain technology, and we meet frequently with legitimate parties here really trying to do something innovative, and we're trying to help them navigate the securities laws as they do so.